Did you get the? It's okay. Go ahead. You guys make the magic happen. Introduce yourselves.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Jenny Young with the Office of Juvenile Justice and supporting today with the community engagement team. And so happy to be here to support. If you need anything, please let me know.
I'm Jennifer Redmond, Assistant Secretary for JR. Happy to be here. Thank you to those who are able to be here in person and obviously several who are online. Like it was noted, we did this for Spokane or East of the Mountains yesterday, had great participation and quite a few folks actually who logged in from the west side based off of locations that I knew. So it might be a bit of a mixed bag. But just really appreciate your time. I am going to be on my laptop. I'm not doing other work. I'm monitoring the chat so I can kind of prepare responses to questions as they come in. And we will do responses to questions at the end of the formal presentation. So thank you. Oh, Steph, sorry.
Hi, I'm Steph Budrus. I'm with DCYF. I'm on our government affairs team and I support juvenile rehabilitation. So obviously a lot of legislative direction is embedded in this project. So kind of here to just be helpful in that lane.
We'll figure. I know. Our test worked.
It did.
There you go.
Okay, you good?
All right, perfect. Thank you everyone for being here today, both in the room and online. Just a very quick agenda for our presentation today. We will cover the DCYF JR mission and vision that underlies and informs the master plan effort. We're here to share our BCRA and trainer team how we go through a master plan process, what that looks like for us and where we are in the process. As Jeff mentioned, we've collected data and review, but we're just at the very beginning of our recommendation session. But we're really prioritizing the listening session. That's going to be more than half of our time today will be devoted to hearing the questions that you have. Any comments or feedback is welcome. A few housekeeping items. The session is recorded. And for those who are online, we do have someone monitoring the chat. As the Assistant Secretary says, she will be reviewing that as well. But if you do have a comment or something that you want to say, you can raise your hand through the Zoom platform and we have someone to notify us and call on you. And then we were notified that at 5 p.m. today, so about halfway through our allotted time, the doors will lock and we may hear some of that. So just letting everyone in the room know not to be alarmed if that does happen. We're all good. And then another note is that we do have a QR code at the end of the presentation for a follow-up survey if anybody prefers to provide feedback that way. That will also be available for those online, but as well as anyone else who was unable to attend today. So first, we want to thank you for showing up today. Our goal for the master plan is to provide a roadmap for DCYF over the next 6 to 10 years. So as the design team, we've reviewed population data. We have toured the existing facilities, both the secure JR facilities as well as the community facilities. We've met with JR staff. And we're in the process of defining that anticipated need over the next 6 to 10 years and comparing that to what the existing conditions are, what you have. So what JR will need versus what they have, and that informs or defines the recommendations. So your voice and perspective is an important part of the process. And we'll collect that today through the recorded session, but also the survey at the end. So our master plan, just as one item to note, the images that you're seeing on the screen here, that was from a previous DCYF JR master plan. It was published in 2021. However, the population data from that report was gathered in 2020, and it had not yet realized the full impact of recent legislation. In fact, one of the items we heard yesterday is that's still ongoing, where we're still continuing to see the impact of the recent JR 25 legislation. So one of our goals is to make sure that we're building something in that will be flexible and adaptable. The design team is using the information started in this master plan and building upon it. So we're doing a fresh look at the population data and using that to provide the roadmap for any future projects or renovations. And the goal is really to have that strategic look ahead, so that as they're deciding and making decisions on capital projects, future capital projects, that it's incorporating best standards, but also their vision and mission.
Yeah, so I'm gonna read these to you, so bear with me, but it's important to kind of ground this in our vision and mission within DCYF JR. So the vision is all Washington's children and young people grow up safe and healthy, thriving physically, emotionally, and educationally, nurtured by family and community. And that screen is in the way, so I don't want to make this up. Thank you. The mission is we work alongside Washington's vulnerable children, young people, and families to foster safety, stability, and better outcomes by strengthening opportunities, connections, and community. I didn't know that by heart because we just updated it about 2 months ago, so sorry, Tana. I don't know it by heart yet, but it's important because I can say for the juvenile rehabilitation, this mission was created after we became a part of DCYF. So when DCYF was first created as a new agency, JR was not a part of it. We came a year after. And so things were already developed and being created. So this is particularly important for us. We see ourselves, we see our work more grounded in this mission. And it was important to just start the framework with that because this master plan needs to be in alignment with our mission.
One of the first steps that we undertook was having a visioning session right out of the gate. Our participants included DES, our design team, DCYF leadership. We had JR staff, including secure and treatment staff. And we reviewed everything from what are the current conditions, what are the opportunities that this master plan presents, what are any challenges, and ultimately your priorities and vision that you have. And from that visioning session, we developed the guiding principles, the start of which you see here on the screen, that really serve as the markers or metrics for our entire process. And one of the first items that really rose to the top in that initial visioning session was to address the overcrowding, particularly at Green Hills schools, which we'll see throughout the presentation today. And I wanted to state from the outset that it's really important. It's not just about adding a certain number of beds, but it's really about aligning the right type of beds that are needed to meet the needs, the population needs, whether that be the various age groups and how that's been impacted by the recent legislation, whether it's gender, mental health needs, the security, classification, length of sentence, how we're utilizing secure facilities versus the community facilities, and then making sure that the number of beds is being balanced by the treatment and program opportunities that we want to have at all of the JR facilities, all while maintaining a safe and secure operation. That's first and foremost, will be a part of the recommendations. The other item that is really important to note here is it came up over and over in our visioning session is to improve the outcomes for young people. And this is both while the young people are in the within JR custody, but also when they are released back to the community, and how are we structuring the facilities to make sure that we're improving those outcomes on both accounts. Another aspect that's really important for us at Trainer is to note that we want to make sure we're improving outcomes for staff as well, the staff who are working with the young people and making sure that they feel safe when they're coming to work, that they are safe while they're at work. This allows them to improve their job performance, and overall it strengthens staff retention for JR. So that's also going to be a part of our recommendations. If you want to elucidate a little more on that.
Yeah, so additional guiding principles, obviously we want to have a therapeutic milieu. And fortunately, in some of the more recent designs that we've done with living units and some of our spaces, we've been able to incorporate that, that approach to include a trauma-informed design approach. And so it goes further down in the bullets, but trauma-informed single bunk we need to be single bunked. Echo Glen is all single bunk. That has not been the world that Green Hill specifically has been able to live in. The population that we're serving today is different than the population 20 years ago. They're more complex, a lot of trauma, and they need to have their private space to go to sleep, lay their head down, and just decompress. And so we're really trying to kind of really just stick to that principle. We want it to be a non-negotiable, which hasn't always been the case previously in our capacity. Least restrictive environment. We want to make sure that, even within our secure facilities, that we're creating flexible space. And so it's easier to have a more secure space that then you can kind of downgrade security classification as opposed to having a minimum security classification having to upgrade. So we want to have flexible space that ultimately leads to a least restrictive environment. Smaller housing facilities, anybody who's been to Green Hill School, those larger living units, which have 40 rooms, back in the 90s held upwards of 65 young people per living unit. They were designed back when the super predator laws came into place and we had about 1,500 young people in the juvenile population. It was designed for capacity, and we know way more now than we knew back then. And I'm not owning that design, but that's not good. That is not good. It's not trauma informed. It doesn't create therapeutic space. And so we want to move away from that. And kind of our sweet spot is that 16-bed environment within each kind of separate living space on campuses where possible. And then I think just, going back to the therapeutic milieu, we want to make sure we're incorporating colors. And Stacy will kind of go into this in a little more detail with some pictures. We've been able to do that with some of our more recent designs. We've had youth voice involved in some of those design with murals and colors and carpet and acoustics. And we want to continue to kind of use that in any design wherever we end up, taking this as far as master plan, that we have youth incorporated in all design processes. And then last but not least, we are engaged with several accrediting bodies. And so PBS and CBS, that's performance-based standards and community-based standards. Those are kind of the juvenile equivalent to the American Correctional Association, ACA. So those are best practice standards for all things in juvenile justice facilities. NCCHC, National Commission for Correctional Healthcare, and then of course PREA requirements. We want to make sure that any design or space we create is in compliance with that.
And to dive into that a little deeper and to share some images and additional thoughts around the trauma-informed design approach, we recognize that a lot of the young people involved in the justice system have experienced trauma in their life, often multiple traumas. They have high ACEs scores, the adverse childhood experiences. And so with our design, we want to make sure that we're providing spaces that allow for a more positive response to that trauma. So having views to nature, studies even show that a mural of simulated nature can provide that have a calming response for the young people instead of having a negative response where they're feeling agitated in a space. And we do that by stressing the image and setting, having a welcoming yet safe environment when a young person's coming into a facility for the first time for assessment. It's using the role of nature in our spaces, whether that is through murals, it can also be through color or materials. Keeping in mind spaces for personalization, recognizing a sense of human scale, but then also having different sizes of spaces. We also see, being able to move a chair, you have some autonomy over your space, that is important as well. And then a connection to community, whether that's with our local partnerships, with vocational opportunities, that it really does play a big part in what we're trying to create, the whole environment. We have two slides here just showing some of the existing conditions. In both of the examples, we are showing images from the recent projects. This one is at Echo Glen, where there's a recent upgrade to one of the cottages. You'll notice here the additional acoustic panels in the day room space. I'm really incorporating natural materials as well. And then we're also showing a comparison to some of the recent projects that we have worked on with Trainer that incorporate some of these principles into our designs. This is an example from Green Hill School. This was the upgrade at Baker Housing. Again, this had more acoustic panels to the space, murals, a more normative environment. And that's what we're looking to incorporate as a part of our recommendations. And again, providing some additional images of recent projects. One of the areas to highlight is a national best practice as we look to prioritizing treatment spaces is that it's not as simple as just saying, oh, here's one program room, that's your opportunity for program, but there's really a more nuanced approach that we want to incorporate. So making sure that that is accounted for in the visitation space, and especially knowing the population of JR recently and over the next 6 to 10 years, making sure that that visitation space is appropriate for that population. Having program rooms that allow for one-on-one counseling, small group counseling, having calming and restorative spaces even within a housing unit, so there can just be a moment to de-escalate. Having both passive and active recreation opportunities. And then, of course, education and vocation is a big part, a big component of the secure facilities. But it's also having items for maker spaces or teaching life skills. Washington remains on the leading edge of evidence-based research regarding juvenile brain development and extending the juvenile and adult jurisdiction to 25 for those who have committed crimes before the age of 18, and keeping them within the juvenile justice system is important. That in 2018, Washington passed SB 6160, which extended that juvenile jurisdiction for certain crimes up to age 25. And then in 2019, HB 1626 allowed people who committed crimes under the age of 18 who were convicted in adult court to stay in JR up to age 25 and can be on electronic monitoring in the age of up to the age of 26 under certain circumstances. And although the map that is shown on the screen here represents data through 2018, it does show that the states with the in the darker blue color, those are the states that have the highest age of delinquent young people that can remain within the juvenile court jurisdiction. And Washington is only one of 9 states. Again, this is using data from 2018, but this has impacted the JR population. And part of the master plan is to understand how we need more flexible and adaptable spaces to meet the needs of that changing demographic. A great example of that is shown on this slide, where we're comparing the age of the JR population from January 2020, that's on the top. The graph on the bottom is January of 2025, and what you'll notice is the increase for those who are 20 and above, 20 to 26. And so we want to make sure that we're accounting for that in the programs, visitation, and even just the mindset shift that happens when you have an older cohort as a part of the population. Here we'll see the average daily population going back from 2014 through 2025. And upcoming slides, we refer to this as ADP. So when you see that ahead, that's what we're referring to as the average daily population for JR. And the dashed vertical line is showing that position of in time where the previous master plan was published, so just that you can get a sense of context of where the population was at that time of the master plan. And since then, there has been an increase in the JR population. Most of that increase has occurred within the secure population. You'll note here that the community facilities have remained relatively consistent. A couple of other items to note here is that the CTS with the electronic home monitoring started in late 2024. We also had in 2022 the closure of the Naselle Youth Camp, and then Harbor Heights just recently opened up as well to address the overcrowding at Green Hill School. This slide is showing that ADP that I was mentioning before, we're showing both the minimum, the average is the middle color, and then the peak. Of course, average daily population is important when we're trying to understand the data. However, we want to keep in mind the peaks as well and how that tracks with the safe operating capacity. And throughout 2025, the JR population was around 430 young people. The dashed line for each of these facilities does show that safe operating capacity for each of the facilities. So what you'll note here is that Green Hill School did operate above capacity, and this is again throughout 2025. Echo Glen during this time had 9 housing cottages available, so that had a safe operating capacity of 120. And you'll note here that they were operating within their safe operating capacity. Having a couple of times, I think their peak happened twice in 2025, so that is all within the realm of what you would want to see for that facility. Harbor Heights and the community facilities operated below capacity. A couple of items to note here with Harbor Heights. This at the time only had 1 pod open, and based on, there were operational considerations for the youth that would be appropriate for that environment. And as long as they met the criteria, that's the youth that were, the young people that were there at Harbor Heights. Since this time, a second pod has opened up at Harbor Heights, and I believe now that the capacity there is around 28 to 30 young people. And then with the community facilities, that is accounting for, there's 1 female community facility, and there's Park Creek, which serves a younger population. And both of those really do, they drive down inherently the number that can fulfill those requirements. So that helps explain a little bit of why that one is lower. In terms of where we are as we start to shift to understanding the data, and as we look for recommendations out of the master plan, this is a map of both the secure and the green, and in yellow, the community facilities within JR. Noting that there are 3 secure facilities all on the western side of the state, with 3 community facilities. On the eastern side of the state, there are no secure facilities, and there are 5 of the community facilities. The one female community facility is located on the eastern side of the state.
I'm so sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Is there any way to take the
I know.
squares off?
Got it. Yeah.
Apologies for
Like, we
interrupting.
don't want to mess with the technology mid, yeah, she's trying.
Thank you.
I'll try one more time. I would just drag it off. No, just do it.
Yay.
Oh.
Thank you, appreciate it.
That would have been away.
I wish I had that when the
Didn't
mission
know.
statement.
And one of the items that we noted was in aligning the DCYF mission and vision looking forward, there was the recommendation to no longer house the young people at Harbor Heights. And we will talk about that shifting capacity to a new facility by the legislature and in an upcoming slide, believe the next slide. And Mission Creek, which is identified by the blue outline circle, that was part of that legislature request, which we'll move to this one. So the legislature stated to identify another existing or another facility that could be operational by 2029 that would serve 50 or fewer young people. So we reviewed multiple sites. DCYF provided a list for us, and you'll see all, oops, somehow I got. That's not responding. So yeah, I guess next slide. There we go. So there was a pre-designed report for added JR bed capacity that was initiated about 6 months ago. And you'll see here the sites that were provided by DCYF that we analyzed as a part of this additional capacity report of how we can meet that legislature request. We toured the 4 locations that are identified on the left-hand side. And the location that was deemed most viable to meet that legislature request to be operational by 2029 was Mission Creek. And so that became the preferred option as a part of our pre-design report. So the Mission Creek option, this was a DOC facility, a DOC women's facility. Prior to that, it was a JR camp. And DOC has maintained this site as a ready state in case of an emergency. So that was one of the items that helped rise that to the top, is that it wouldn't take that much capital investment in order to have it ready for operation. DOC leases the land from DNR, and it does have water restrictions. However, with the population that would be here on Mission Creek, that was deemed not an issue, and that DOC has maintained a good working relationship with the community. And we'll expound on the renovation efforts as a part of the pre-design report a little bit later on. So in terms of the update to the population analysis, we have a few slides identifying that. 6% of the JR population is female. That has remained relatively consistent over the last 5 years. We did note the 1 community facility at Ridgeview, and there are 2 housing cottages on the Echo Glen Children's Center campus for females. So one of the aspects of the master plan that we are reviewing and keeping in mind is how we can have equitable opportunities for the female population. This is a similar challenge for many jurisdictions across the country because the number tends to be much smaller, but you want to make sure that you're still delivering the same program treatment opportunities. We've also conducted a regional analysis of a region of commitment for the JR population, noting here that 30% of the young people in JR custody reside from the eastern side of the state. And we, as indicated in the earlier map, that only has 5 community facilities and no secure facilities on that side.
Mine? Okay. So I'm just going to give a quick overview for those who may not be as familiar with kind of the path or the journey that young people can take during their time in the JR system. So to the left-hand side, it's our secure facilities that were already kind of mentioned and described. We have Green Hill School, which serves a population of about 17-year-old up to age 25 males. Echo Glen School, Echo Glen Children's Center is serving our younger male population up to age 17, and then our entire secure facility female population. So that can be anywhere from, typically age 16 to all the way up to age 25. Specifically, if the young woman has a Department of Corrections or an adult sentence that extends beyond age 25. And then Harbor Heights, which was recently added a little bit less than a year ago to provide some relief from Green Hill School. That is not a facility that direct placement can happen. So it only receives transfers from Green Hill School, largely because they don't have the nursing or mental health providers to do the necessary assessments and triaging to determine appropriate placement. So they start at Green Hill School, and then if they meet certain criteria, then they can transition to Harbor Heights. So anytime a young person is in a secure facility, they can serve a portion of their sentence there. And if they meet community facility eligibility requirements, which are kind of laid out predominantly in statute, then there's also kind of a appropriateness, so we're looking at needs assessments and risk and behavior within the facility outside of statutorily how much time you have to serve in secure confinement before you can go to a community facility. You can move to a community facility. Now, there is a caveat that the young people who are serving adult sentences, if their release date, which is managed by the Department of Corrections, extends beyond age 25, then they are ineligible to access a least restrictive setting. So as it sits right now, they can only reside at Green Hill School or now at Harbor Heights. So for the young people who are eligible to be able to be placed into a community facility, we have 8 community facilities across the state, 5 on the east side, 3 on the west side. It was already described that there's some different, population demographics, and it's important that we have 8 community facilities because we need to be able to have some facilities for the older males, have some facilities for the young women, have facility for the young boys. We don't want to mix those populations out in the community because the needs are just different. And then moving along, obviously, young people can release directly to home, either on parole supervision or no parole supervision. So not all young people are eligible for parole services in JR. The ones who are eligible for parole services, they can typically go out for about 6 months of parole. Sometimes for our youth who sexually offend, it can be longer than that. Other youth, they can go out with no community supervision. And that was because our parole was cut in half and based off of just our highest risk young people receive our intensive parole services. For the rest, we do have community assisted reentry, which is a voluntary program or called CAR. And so it's something that was funded. It's a cadre of resources and support that is completely voluntary. So young people can opt in and access those resources for a period of time post-release. And then last but not least, our newest program, which is Community Transition Services. So this is, it's electronic home monitoring in lieu of confinement. They are still under sentence, and so they would either otherwise be in a community facility or a secure facility, but if they are at the later part of their sentence, so the last 18 months of their sentence, they can be eligible. There's some crime disqualifiers and other eligibility criteria, but they can be eligible to serve the last part of their sentence on electronic home monitoring in an approved placement or independent. We will help, set them up, and we have some resources to kind of get them set up for independent living if that is their goal. Typically, the most success is when they can transition from a community facility, though. We want them to be in a community facility for a period of time, build up their bank account, learn how to be more independent, and then we can transition them out to community transition services. It doesn't automatically happen at that 18-month pre-release. Sometimes it's at 12 months or 6 months. Sometimes it's based off when they feel comfortable and ready. We have some youth, and we're working on it, that are saying, I don't want to do it. They don't want to do it. They want to stay in the community facility. And we're trying to figure that out, because we want them to do it. But yeah, so fortunately, we did receive some funding this last legislative session to expand CTS, that Community Transition Services. So after July 1, we're able to hire a few additional staff to provide the support, because it does require 24-hour support for young people. If a crisis happens or something, we want them to be able to have someone to reach out to, even though they might be living independently, in case of an emergency, because we don't want them to make an unhealthy choice and run away or use or something like that. So we needed it to be adequately funded, and fortunately we received additional funding to expand placement for that.
To dive into the community facilities in a little more detail, on the west side, there's Oak Ridge, Touchstone, and Woodinville. Those 3 facilities tend to house an older population. Those young people are enrolled in class or they are employed in the community. On the eastern side, Ridgeview is the female community facility, and this does have a wide age range from 14 to 22, 23-year-olds. So there's a variety of different population needs, even within that one female community facility. Park Creek is the community facility that houses the younger males. It's located in a remote location, and those young people attend school throughout the day there at Park Creek. Sunrise is another community facility that tends to have young males, but it's not exclusive. It's not as exclusively young male as Park Creek is. And then Twin Rivers and Canyon View have the mix of ages, mostly older, that are enrolled in school or working in the community. This shows a snapshot of the data of all of the community facilities. So it's combining all 8 into the data that you're seeing on the screen. So you'll see the wide age range. 80% of those in a community facility have a JR sentence, while the other remaining 20% have that DOC pre-25. And a majority of the young people have a length of stay of 1 to 3 years. And you'll note that there are 30% that have a 3 to 6 year length of stay. Moving to the secure facilities, so this is Green Hills School. It is a medium and maximum classification with that safe operating capacity for 180 young people. This does have the 3 larger housing units toward the bottom of the map that you can see that had the 40 bedrooms. With its overcrowding, it's been hard to have all of the programming opportunities that are available on this campus just for movement, supervision, management. In terms of the recent projects, the recreation building, that's kind of to the top and right in the dark green, that was a recent project, as well as the renovation of Baker South for mental health and Baker North for independent living. And there is a project underway now. It's in the pre-design capacity phase for the visit center. And I know that there is a design underway for the Spruce housing unit, one of the large 40-bed units, to split those into 2 16-bed wings. The population demographics for Green Hills School, again, taken from November 2025. Here you'll see that 40% or approximately 40% have a JR sentence, while 60% have a DOC sentence. And one of the interesting items to point out here is that 41% have that DOC post 26 sentence. And so that does set up different pathways, needs, different educational opportunities, vocational programming, but then the mindset and how someone's attending visitation at this facility is very different than what we'll see at Echo Glen. Another item to point out here is that 50%, that dark blue in the middle pie chart of the young people here have a length of stay of over 6 years. So again, as we were looking at the trajectory in the slides that we were seeing before, those young people are on a different path. And then almost 75% of those at Green Hill are on the western side of Washington. Moving to Echo Glen Children's Center. This is also a secure facility, medium and maximum classification. It does have the safe operating capacity in 2025 of 120, but a recently upgraded cottage is now bringing that up to 132, I believe. The current projects, they're installing a secure fence on this campus and also have a pre-design for a visit center. And as we noted before, there are 2 of the housing cottages that are for females. And on this campus, all of the housing cottages are 12 to 16 people each. So the population demographics look very different from what we saw at Green Hill School. In this case, 85% of the young people here do have a JR sentence. The age range that you see here, it is more of the younger population. The reason why you'll see this fewer capacity, but of the older age groups is because of it does house the 2 female housing cottages there. 42% have a length of stay of 1 to 3 years, and 30% have less than 1 year. And then as we look to the option for Mission Creek as a part of the pre-design report that was recently published, this is proposed as a medium secure facility. We noted that it was a women's facility that used to be a JR camp. Although the pre-design study has been completed, this project is still in progress. We haven't begun the initial design work. JR hasn't initiated the initial design work for this project yet. However, the intent is to submit a more detailed design status in the upcoming biennial budget request. And the goal here is that it is to be occupied by 2029 and to transfer the operating costs from Harbor Heights in order to meet that immediate need. In terms of the renovation, there is the proposal for additional renovation at the administration, visitation, education, recreation, and medical. We're also proposing 2 housing unit renovations. Bear on the left would be for 24 beds, Gold on the right is for 26 beds. And each of these housing units would have four separate wings, a day room and several program rooms for a variety of those program and treatment opportunities. The renovations are as needed for a minimum security. Important to note that while it was 2-bed occupancy previously, part of the renovation effort is to have single rooms here at this campus, individual restrooms, and overall recommendations for it to meet those guiding principles that we outlined at the very beginning of the presentation. So making sure that we're keeping the therapeutic milieu and trauma-informed design as a part of this project. And with that, we conclude our formal presentation and open it up to any questions or comments, thoughts that you have.
There's way more questions in Spokane.
I have a question. When you discussed the least restrictive environment, for the cottages, you really didn't go into detail about what that really represented as far as creating the least restrictive environment.
Yeah.
Are we able to elaborate on it, or are we kind of still vetting that?
Do you mean within secure facilities
Yes,
or,
correct.
because obviously, yeah, so obviously our goal is to create a least restrictive continuum. And so that there can be that step down, but we also want step down within the secure facility campuses. I'll use Green Hill as an example. Green Hill has a maximum security living unit for young people who are, going through some behavioral crisis. They have a couple residential mental health units that are also more secure and have maximum security capability, acute care zones similar to what Echo Glen has for behavioral crisis. And then they have the medium security living units that are out on the rest of campus. The most recent design that happened at Green Hill is called Baker North. And so that is kind of more of an independent living unit. And so it's got an open patio. There's more kind of free movement. There's an on-unit kitchen, so they can make their own meals. They actually do family style dinners. I'm not gonna say it's a group home on a secure facility campus, but it's about as close to that as you can get. Because we have some young people, particularly the ones that can never go to a community facility. We want to be able to provide them some kind of space to get some independent living skills. And so that's where some of that least restrictive, where appropriate, design is coming in. So we would want to do the same thing at any secure facility that we design from this point forward.
So basically you're saying a step down process within the process itself.
Yep.
Okay, thank you
Yep.
so much. Appreciate it.
I have a question. My question is, I was wondering about, in the adult, when you're getting out, they prepare you for the work field, work.
Mhm.
So my question is that ever something that you are considering doing? Is because I think that it's very essential for the kids to start learning the job skills and
Yeah.
interviewing, how to make resumes, being responsible and knowing how to take the bus or fill out job applications.
Yeah.
Even maybe getting a job before some of them, 16 to 18. That sense of responsibility, I think, could give them a purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. And we agree with that. So it looks a couple different ways depending on where the young person lives. So obviously, if they're residing in our community facilities, they're doing all those things. The past handful of community facilities that I visited recently, I go in there, there's hardly any kids there because they're out working, they're out at college, they're out at a local high school if that's where they go to school. So they are out working or going to some type of barber school or something like that, depending on where the community facility sits. So those are kind of well baked into our community facility, our minimum security facilities. In our secure facilities, particularly at Green Hill, there is the kind of on-campus work experience, and they try to make it as real life work as possible. So young people have to fill out an app. Go ahead.
I know you said Green Hill, but I was wondering about specifically for the women. And
Oh,
also, my other question was, I seen something say the community placements or the community, what, other than the facilities that were listed, is there other community facilities?
not for JR Youth currently. So for JR Youth, the only community facilities or minimum security facilities that we have are the 8 that were listed on the map there.
I just seen that there was a category that said other community, community placements, but it was in its own category, so I was just wondering if it's anything different.
On the trend, on your continuum slide.
Oh, I don't know, maybe it was in reference to CTS or something, yeah.
I was wondering what the
Yeah.
other category was, what was listed under that category.
Yeah, if they're, and it, maybe it's in relation to post-release, so when they're not under commitment anymore. So another community placement, it could be with home or family or independent. I'm assuming that's what it was for, but within JR, if you're still under commitment or still under sentence, the only options are the 8 community facilities, the secure facilities, and then if they're eligible for community transition services, which is that electronic home monitoring.
Then maybe do you want to address the women
Yeah.
within the community facilities and they have similar opportunities for?
Yeah, so the community facilities, Ridgeview, so yes, they fill out job applications, have work out in the community. Echo Glen, and this kind of gets to what Stacy was speaking about, Echo Glen has a very small female population. I know they have 2 living units, but those 2 living units are not full capacity because the population is so small. But we need to have 2 living units in order to provide different space for the more acute mentally ill young women, and then those that are kind of more long-term, independent, and I know Sheree can probably speak a lot about it. So we have like those 2 distinct programs. They go to high school, but a lot of them graduate from high school because they're there so long. So we're currently engaged with discussions with local community colleges to get college on campus in some way, shape, or form. It's probably gonna have to be virtual just because of the small numbers. We're unable to find a college professor to come on campus and teach in person. So we're working through have that online by the summer so that men can have college coursework similar to the young men at Green Hill School. As far as vocational opportunities at Echo Glen, there's a barista program, they've had a cosmetology program and things like that before. But again, for the female population, because it's so small, I think it's gonna be an evolving process because some of them are there so long. We have to be able to pivot and change and offer different programs kind of rolling over time, if that makes sense. So we're still trying to figure it out. Part of this master plan process is also for us to look at, maybe there's a different way to serve the female population. There's been some thoughts and I'll throw them out there. Maybe we create our own standalone female facility that serves all security classifications, maximum, medium, minimum, and they all get served there. That way we can just do all gender responsive programming and make sure that we're providing equitable programming for all young women and not have it just kind of pieced out all over. So I just kind of showed my hand a little bit, but I welcome that feedback. So there's going to be a survey, and if people have specific ideas, we want to hear the creative things because we recognize we're missing the mark a little bit there.
Well, I have a little feedback for you on the Mission Creek thing with
Yeah.
that. I think that could be a great option. I know that facility and I know that it can house, they have secured unit, which they call the SHU, which is in the main building.
Yeah,
And that could classify people that need to be restrained. And then I know that there's Bear and Mission or in Gold also.
yeah,
But I think that also one of the things that I know from that facility is that only one of the buildings is wired for cable. So maybe that's gonna be in the renovations that you guys
Yeah.
spoke of. But I was thinking that when I heard that sounded to me, I was like, oh, that might be really good actually, because there's already the fitness center. And across the street, they have a field that they would use for like activities and sports.
thank you.
Have a couple questions in the chat and one hand raised on Zoom.
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
So I am wondering why you're not fully utilizing Harbor Heights and why you're shifting, especially when there's so much census pressure at Green Hill.
Yeah.
And you were starting to say what is available at Green Hill. I know when I toured, I was shocked at the overcrowding. I know it's gotten better since
Yeah.
I was there, and equally shocked that there were no children there.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 17-year-olds, so it's not what I think of as JR.
Yeah.
So that just that shift to 18 to 25 and the impact on the small programs.
Yeah.
That were there, are you able to use that? Has the overcrowding reduced enough that you're able to use the programs that are there that weren't really getting used?
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna try to remember all those questions. I'll start with Harbor Heights first. So Harbor Heights has 48 rooms. We initially went into it going, we'll probably be comfortable with 46 young people there because you always want to build in a little bit of flex space in case you have to do a room repair or something like that. We moved our first cohort of young people there. It was kind of a slow, steady process, and we were kind of hovering around 20 young people there, give or take. I think that's about right, because we're only able to occupy one pod at a time, and each pod has 24 rooms. The other pod was being used for medical because we were doing construction, creating a medical portable that it just permitting and all that stuff. We did not get that up and running until about late March. So we were kind of stuck just programming people in this one pod. During that time, we realized there's not a lot of space here. There's just not a lot of space. So the medical portable opened up. We were able to add more young people there. And so today they're at about 28, 29. But we're able to kind of separate them across two pods. And we're probably at that sweet spot. I think we're identifying maybe closer to about 32. Any more than that, there's not a lot of program space for things outside of being in your room, and we don't want them in their room at all. So there's an outdoor rec yard that we've put a lot of investment in. There's sod that's being laid, I think, soon, and a basketball court, walking path, things like that. So that is a space. It rains a lot in Aberdeen. So I mean, it's also, and that's their choice. It's like, I don't want to go out in the rain. I don't blame them. In the summertime, it's great. But when the weather turns, they end up wanting to program inside, which is absolutely fine, but they really get underfoot. And we started kind of seeing those dynamics the longer and longer we were there and the more young people that we added. There is a separate admin portable that's used for group space. And so when we have providers come in and things like that, they'll use, it's just a regular portable and there's a shared space, but then you're kind of limited to one group space happening at one time. So, those were things that maybe we could have predicted a little better, but we needed space. We needed to get some kids off Green Hills campus. So now that things have kind of slowed down at Green Hill. So Green Hill today, I think, is about 193, 194. So much better than when you were there. There's some breathing room. And so we're slow playing those moves to Harbor Heights and making sure that they're the right moves because of the lack of program space, we have to be mindful of dynamics, and rivals and things like that. We don't want to put young people in situations where they make bad choices. So for that reason, we're going to keep Harbor Heights probably at 32. And that's just what's healthy for Harbor Heights and what's healthy for the young people. As far as Green Hill, now that we're kind of closer to that, 180 is a safe operating capacity, and that allows for some flex space for any type of uptick of population. We're not quite single bunked yet at all of Green Hill, but there's a little bit of flex space with that 194 number. Young people are programming. So there's room confinement is down, modified programming is down, all those things that typically happen when you're overcrowded and understaffed. Those are rare occurrences now. Fights are down, aggression is down. We track, use of force rates. They're cut in half. So things are going really well at Green Hill, but that's not me saying that we're done yet because we're not at that 180 mark, and we want to make sure we kind of stay the course because we're just a population uptick away from being back where we were a couple of years ago, and we don't want that to happen. As far as the population demographics at Green Hill, I don't know what to say about that. I mean, it's the change in legislation just means we have young people with us that are with us for about 6 years or longer. And like Stacy mentioned, the growth is with those individuals that have release dates that go beyond age 25. So they can only be at Green Hill or now Harbor Heights. So, what that means is we're having to keep those 17-year-olds and under at Echo Glen. Or they go out to a community facility, which they'll go if they're ready to go. We've actually had to hold some 17-year-olds a little bit longer at Echo Glen, getting sometimes up to closer to their 18th birthday. But that's a non-negotiable, like you're turning 18, you gotta move you to Green Hill. But Echo's kind of held on to some young people longer than they probably would like to, just in order to keep Green Hill at that lower level.
I think that was all.
Did I get all of them?
Yeah, you did. Pretty good.
Okay. Okay. And I can't, my glasses on, I can't see it.
So we have one hand raised on Zoom, Avril, and then we have several questions in the chat. So which one would you like to do first? Hand raised?
Yep.
Right, Avril, would you like to go ahead?
Sure. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. I'm Judge Avril Rothrock from King County Superior Court, and I really appreciate this presentation. And to Ms. Redmond, I was at the tour that you led in October of 2024 of Green Hill, and I really appreciate the comments that you've made throughout the day. So I have a high level of confidence. You know much more about all of this than I do. One first question I had was, one of the strategies when the numbers were swelling at Green Hill was to permit some of the older cohort to elect to go to DOC. And my question to you is, how much is that happening now?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I know Senator Wilson's on here and she saw data I just shared earlier. So I don't have it in front of me. So if you wrote that down, Senator Wilson, please share it. We did have some young people self-request to go to DOC, and they can do that through a formal process. They have an attorney that represents them to make sure that there's no coercion and that they've made an independent choice to go. When the overcrowding was happening, we did have some young people that were self-requesting to go. Probably not as many as I would assume. I think they were really, especially the ones who'd been around a long time, they were just holding out, thinking we got to get back to Old Green Hill at some point. This isn't normal, especially, the ones that were, there in the, 2018, 2019, and Green Hill was all they knew. I think now we just looked at data in 2025. I believe there were, don't quote me on this unless Senator Wilson has it, I think there were 14 self-requests. Is that right?
Yeah. She nodded. Thumbs up.
Okay.
That's what I was going to say, but I didn't want to misspeak. So now we both were thinking the same number. Yes.
So there was 14 self-requests, 6 that went for cause meaning that they were creating a significant safety and security issue. And so then they go before a board and have a hearing, and it's determined whether they need to transfer to DOC because JR can't safely manage them. So I think there were 25. The 14 self-requests, it's interesting, in talking with some of them, because some of them happened when I had to go back to Green Hill this last time to help out, some of the reasons they gave is they just had been there too long. They were just kind of done, they were like 24 years old. So they hadn't hit their 25th birthday yet, but they were just ready to move on because they knew they had to go anyway. Other ones, I just spoke to one coincidentally today, who is self-requesting to go from Harbor Heights to Department of Corrections, a little bit less than a year early. They want to get an opportunity to go to work release sooner. And so if they can get kind of into DOC, then they can start working towards getting to a work release, which is, much less than what we would have our community facilities be, because they're not eligible to be in our community facilities because of that post-25 ERD. So those are typically the reasons. Another reasons that they gave have been, that they see the younger guys coming in, the 17, 18, 19-year-olds, and they just don't want to get in the mix. It's just, they're just at a different kind of maturity level. And so they just kind of make the independent decision to go. I think early on the self-requests were because of conditions. They're like, I don't want to be part of this overcrowding thing. Now, I think it's for different reasons. It's some of those older guys that have been there so long, like that 6-year, 7-year mark. And they're just like, I think it's time because I have to go anyway.
Well, I guess the long-term plan is going to grapple a little bit with that and how you keep those kids that have been there longer towards their 25th year stimulated and have access to programs that they're still interested in. in Green Hill that might entice them to stay rather than go to DOC, I guess for lack of other programs or interest at Green Hill.
Yeah, and I'll just add that's one of the reasons why, because that's where our growth is that older population that can't go anyplace else. We need the medium security beds. And so having another facility that has ample amount of program space that's healthy and trauma informed, where they have some choice, so they can be at Green Hill, they can participate in welding and barber and college and all the programs that Green Hill currently offers when it's not overcrowded. And then they can go, we'll just use Mission Creek as an example, if that were the option. Then they can go to Mission Creek and they can do these other programs for maybe the last couple of years of their sentence before they transition to DOC. So part of it is also creating diverse programs so that we're not making two facilities that look the same.
Yeah. Well, thank you for answering that question. I have one comment just regarding the build it for the maximum high security and then you can step down. I have some, I don't know if I believe that that can be done, I guess. And I would just use the example of the juvenile detention facility that we have in King County as kind of an example, in that when you're building for higher security, it's hard to make it feel homier. One example is the type of doors that we used in the facility. And while we had options that were homier kind of style doors, to have a more secure door that would be most durable and not need to be replaced as frequently, we did a more, institutional metal sounding when you open and close it door. And so I just wonder if in some wings you're not going to be able to achieve what you're going for some of the population if you're going for, highest and least expensive maximum. So that's just a comment on the side. And then my final comment, you were kind of calling out for brainstorming type ideas. And I wanted to say that I think that the programs in our adult facilities that involve pets are very popular. And I'm wondering if that's something that would be considered as you work on this plan at WCCW, formerly known as PURDY. The women who are allowed to have cats on their wings, it's a great program and everyone wants to get in there. And I think it gives them, a lot of meaning while they're staying there. And at Airway Heights, where I visited also, they had, prior to COVID, and I don't know the current status, a dog program that was exceedingly popular. And so, it's so heartwarming when you see that going on, makes the places less institutional feeling. And so I just wanted to throw that out as kind of maybe a wish list or something to consider when you're doing this master planning. So thank you very much.
You had me at pets. One nice thing is when we were able to go to Mission Creek, when it was still occupied by incarcerated women, is they did have a partnership with local humane society, some type of cat program. And so they did have cats there. And so I would like to think wherever the next facility is, and even our current facilities, because we have a dog program at Echo Glen currently. We've embarked on some of this at Green Hill, and it's been a dream of mine. So I couldn't agree more that, pets make for more homier environments. I wanted to come back to you really quick.
So I have a few. So the program that they have at the women's prison for the animals is called Prison Pet Partnerships. And then I also wanted to ask about, so for the adult facilities, they have EFVs, which are extended family visits. So my question is that something that you have at any of the juvenile facilities? Because I know that some of them can be very far from where the people's homes are. And I think that having that family connection on the weekends, it would also give the families more time. And I think that's very essential to people when they're releasing. And the other thing that I wanted to mention was, you talked about Mission Creek being a possible option and that the numbers for females were very low. So my question was, have you all thought about maybe for the educational portion? I know that the instructors have a hard time getting to Mission Creek, or it's a little bit further, but at PURDY, they have a great education. And I think that with the baby unit that they have there with the fence around it, maybe they could implement something with peer support or mentoring. I think that the women that have been in the prison they've gone through a lot of trainings, that they would really like to be like a big sister or a mentor or something of that sort. And like I said, the educational portion, I think that it's maybe a 40 or 45-minute drive from Mission Creek to Purdy. And they have lots of classes and programs there. They have GED, they have, other 2-year programs, they have 4-year programs. And they, like I said, also have the PEP. I just think that maybe like somehow joining that together. And I know that, the youth, there's currently children that live there with the fence around it. So I don't see why like younger women wouldn't be able to be in the same type of environment that infants are in.
Thank you.
The question that I have, I work at Echo Glen in security, and the rooms that you guys showed, they look very homey and I like that. However, my concern is safety with some of the things that they will have access to.
Yeah.
Is that going to be for all of the residents that'll be there? And if so, what safety things have been put in place?
So you mean for any secure facility future design?
Right, I saw like there's chairs and
Yeah.
and desks and things like that, and are they going to be bolted down to the floor, or
Yeah.
will the residents have access to pick them up and things like that?
I think it depends on the unit. Obviously, the more maximum security units, they typically, even the residential mental health units, have more bolted down for just that reason. I think, as well as so they can't move it and tie onto something for self-harm prevention. I think, fortunately, and you might be able to speak to this, we've seen a lot of evolution in design that's been able to allow for, and I hate to put it this way, correctional grade, for that safety and security need, but do so in an aesthetically pleasing way with color, different kind of surfaces, soft features and things like that. Those were some of the things that we were able to incorporate even into Baker North, which is an independent living program, but we still knew we had to still have harder furniture inside the rooms for flex space, so that if we had to kind of change up the classification of the unit, we could do that without having to buy all new furniture. But part of it is it's just design and color and things like that.
Yeah, and I'd say even in terms of not only color, but that has been a big advancement. You can get the furniture where it's movable, but it's ballasted, so it's hard for them to move, but there's still, like, it does take some effort, but it's not as though it can be picked up and thrown. So that is one feature. And I think the other advancement that the detention furniture vendors, providers have been doing is just different styles, different types, different shapes. They will have things that have more of a recline capability. And so there's just a lot more options available today that can provide a more normative environment while still keeping safety in mind. But I also agree it's a continuum. It may not be right for every single unit, but just having those options.
Thank you.
So with the possibility of Mission Creek, would that be the 4th facility for JR, or would it be absorbing another facility at all?
If Mission Creek came online?
Yes, ma'am.
So if Mission Creek came online and the legislature actually directed this, that the population and the operational funds would shift from Harbor Heights to Mission Creek.
That's
So
what I was wondering.
We would
yeah.
have 3 secure facilities at that time.
Right.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
What's the capacity at Mission Creek?
So as a DOC facility, it was well over 100. We would not operate it that way. What we have the design or pre-design that was done is renovating 2 living units, which I think there are only 2 living units with the exception of the space that you referenced.
So Mission was the original building, and then the 2 add-ons were Bear Creek, and then Gold Creek was the 3rd add-on.
Right. So we would be renovating the 2 Bear and Gold,
Yes.
and it would be no more than 50 beds.
And 50 single beds.
Single beds, single rooms, yeah. And I think part of it is we don't want to grow big facilities. It's not in line with best practice across the nation. They're keeping things at a smaller scale. I mean, ideally more regionalized. So I know there's a lot of questions in chat. and
Yeah, I
can't
can read one for
keep
you.
up.
From Greet Schultz, a question regarding capacity. If Echo has nearly 15 more beds, the caseload forecast is trending down for JR population, and JR has opened Harbor Heights, then why is more capacity needed?
Yeah. Right type of beds. So we don't have Echo Glen young people, so the growth isn't at the 12 to 17-year-old males, and there's no growth in the female population. So, and we've already seen some operational challenges at Echo Glen, kind of moving that needle a little bit with some of the having older males than we normally would have because of the overcrowding that has occurred at Green Hill School. So we want to be mindful of Echo Glen's dynamics and the population there. Even though they're getting a fence, like we don't see a day where we're putting 18-year-old males there or anything like that.
And the female has a great factor into that as well.
Right.
If that you have the 2 housing cottages that have 28 beds, but
Yeah.
you may only have 18 to 20 females split there, you're gonna have available beds, but it's not suitable for
Right.
any other
We
population.
want to be able to provide the split space for the 2 distinct female populations that are living on Echo Glen's campus, which results in empty beds.
Next question in the chat from Corey Bush. One of the master plan guiding principles identified a therapeutic milieu focused on trauma-informed care. This requires a qualified workforce to provide these types of services outside of just base level hiring. Have there been considerations about the region of Mission Creek being in a more remote area and the reality of being able to employ this amount of quality staff to provide high-level services?
Yeah, it's absolutely a consideration for any facility that we open up, and we would do a level of workforce review. I think unfortunately, we can't stand up a facility in the middle of King County. You know, it's just with the capacity that we need. It's also hard to find space for a facility with the space requirements that we have that's also going to be accepted by a community. That's just the reality of what we're working with. So I think part of it is that analysis will be done, but then, you know, we also, you know, we've had a presence there before. Granted, it was a lot of years ago, but we also do have more people. You know, there could be the option of potentially people from Harbor Heights if they want to, you know, relocate and be at Mission Creek. We would certainly welcome that, as well as even other people at any of our other facilities that might want to work at Mission Creek within our existing kind of JR structure. Outside of that, we would do recruitment efforts and like we would opening up any place and make sure that we're targeting the most qualified individuals.
Question from Liz Troutman. The legislative direction also directs the development of a plan to establish a secure facility east of the Cascades. To Greet's question, what is the anticipated capacity of JR once Mission Creek and another facility in Eastern Washington are operational?
Yeah, so the correct me if I'm wrong, Stacy or Steph, the legislative requirement was that we needed to identify or incorporate an eastern facility as part of the master plan process, correct?
Yeah, specifically to turn in that feasibility study, I want to say there's a 2027 due date. I think it's July.
Yeah.
So there's kind of like this first, like, what can you stand up by 2029? And then
Yeah.
also as part of like the larger master planning, like, what are you going to do east of the mountains?
Right, so they're 2 separate things as far as what population-wise, based off of today's forecast, and forecast it's stable, so I wouldn't say it's decreasing. It's less than what they predicted it to be, but it's not decreasing from where it's at right now. So based off to today's forecast, it's stabilized. If we were opening Mission Creek, we would be transferring the funded beds from Harbor Heights to Mission Creek. Any future growth would then be for an identified facility east of the mountains. So and it would take that long to even stand up another facility east side of the mountains.
Mission Creek is repurposed as a JR facility. Will it be entirely under DCYF control, or will DOC have an operational or facilities role? Also, will there be DOC staff co-located at the facility?
No, it would be DCYF. Yeah, there'd be no co-location or anything like that. It would be a DCYF facility.
Great. Question from Sarah Zier. What has happened to historic efforts to cite additional community facilities? Is there any work being done to consider a medium security community facility model?
Yeah, so no formal work done except for kind of some cursory review, and that would also come out in the master plan. So we encourage people, if they have that as a suggestion, please put that in the survey at the end. We've had some conversations about, so how can we possibly repurpose a community facility to be a medium minimum? And so it kind of goes back and a little bit in response to what you had mentioned, April. And maybe I didn't categorize it right. When we've looked to potentially explore having a minimum security facility become a medium security facility, and what you need to put in place to make it at that classification, which is typically a perimeter fence and kind of locked doors and things like that, it's a different type of permitting. And typically, communities don't want that. So our community facilities where they're currently located, for the most part, it's great relationships with the community, everything's fine. They have an expectation that this is a group home and young people are in and out, they're low risk and they're going out to the community. It's harder to permit something that is a higher security. And so that's that difficulty going from minimum to medium. That's not us saying we're not willing to do it, because I think it's a good idea and it's going to be incorporated into the master plan for consideration.
A question from Dr. Warnock Peterson. Are there programs that specifically target youth who will end up going to DOC to prepare for that transition? Is JR able to adequately prepare those youth given the inherent mix with youth whom JR is preparing to return to the community?
That's a great question. I would say that JR doesn't have any specific programs to help with that transition outside of, one-on-one counseling, meeting with our credible messengers. So we have people with lived experience who come in and provide contracted services in groups with our young people. So they have some experience in the adult justice system, and so they can kind of help work them through some of what to expect. They have a Department of Corrections classification counselor that can meet with them and give them kind of an idea on what to expect when they make that transition. But there's no specific program. I think to answer your second question, it's a challenge. Second question for those in the room is, how do you adequately prepare someone who's going to be going to DOC or has that long sentence when they're mixing with other youth who are preparing to return to the community or go to a community facility? It's really hard. It's really hard. I can imagine it's hard for young people who are looking at, some pretty extensive sentences to be alongside someone who can go to a community facility in 6 months. It's a different conversation that you have with that young person, and really it's about instilling hope that there is a future for them. It's just going to look different. Programmatic wise, they can go to the same programs in secure facilities. They go to college together. They go to high school together. It's just their transition plan looks different, and the conversations with their case manager or the credible messengers that come on campus, it just looks different, and it's really hard. I think the ideal state would be able to potentially have some of that separation, so they could have a program unique to them and their needs and their journey and path. Or maybe we could even bring in more credible messengers to help kind of run programs for them to best prepare them for what to expect on that transition.
We just have one more question in the chat from Corey Bush. Each of the max medium facilities have general focuses or opportunities, like Echo Glen providing DBT in high school, Green Hill having some trade, certifications, college, etc. What would be primary focuses of services provided at Mission Creek?
Great question, Corey. And Corey's asking all the hard questions today. I don't have an answer. Mission Creek isn't a done deal. Part of, if it is considered a viable option for us to have to expand our medium security capability, part of that would be pulling in youth voice and staff voice and community voice to help identify what the program needs are for that facility. I think the fortunate thing about Mission Creek is it provides the space to do that. which is unlike what we have at Harbor Heights currently. So I think it wouldn't be Jennifer Redmond's decision. We'd be pulling in other people to help inform what makes sense in that space. And be mindful not to duplicate it and have it be exactly what Green Hill School has or Echo Glen has. There's gonna be similarities, but we want it to have its own identity and its diversity in programs.
Got all the questions in the chat.
I
Oh,
think
we
I got
do have
one more.
Sorry. Can you speak to how youth voice is being considered at this point in the planning?
Yeah, so it hasn't been incorporated yet. So what we're thinking is after these community forums and the consultants have time to kind of flesh out the data and put it in buckets of feedback and things like that. Then the next step will determine kind of how to best approach young people and which young people in the best way possible that actually makes it make sense. So part of this is so long-term. It's a 6 to 10 month master plan, and some young people won't be with us that long. So we just want to make sure that we're intentional about the conversations we have with them and they feel like this is meaningful activity for them to do. We do have some youth voice that was incorporated in the previous master plan, which I think we'll dust that off and look at that. And then we'll take this feedback, roll it up, and then have something to present to the young people to kind of mull over and provide feedback on. So that's kind of the plan we're thinking so far. It kind of depends on what we get from these forums. And I'll add one more thing just for people who don't, I think I mentioned it earlier, but any type of capital project that we do, whether we have visitation spaces that are being created. So Green Hill is, I think next month, gonna be rolling out their first family council meeting. So we'll be incorporating family feedback into the visitation space and using that council to help inform that. As well as for Echo Glen, they'll be doing something similar. They don't have a family council yet, but we'll want to be incorporating family voice. But any type of design or construction project that we do, that is a space that young people are going to occupy, we always bring youth voice into it. So we have consultants that work directly with them. They were part of the rec build at Green Hill School, the Baker units, the spaces at Echo Glen. So whether it be the master plan or future design projects, we always have youth voice incorporated.
And then one more question in the chat from Sharon. Is there consideration to increase the number of juvenile detention facilities? The facility in Grant County was closed in 2017.
I don't know anything about that. Yeah, I don't know anything about that.
Juvenile court stuff, so
Yeah.
that would be a county decision, I
Yeah.
believe. And then one more question came through the chat. Is there any consideration of state-county partnerships? Pierce County is considering building a new detention facility. Are there opportunities to co-locate JR facilities with local spaces?
I think partnerships are always a consideration. Obviously they're I don't want to say their business, but what they do is different than what we do. We're managing more long-term placement and they're more short-term placement. So I would imagine even though there'd be a lot of design and functional similarities, there's also a lot of differences. I'm always open to partnership. I just think there might be some differences in functional and needs from what we're looking for more long-term placement compared to county. Does anybody have anything to add?
There were some legal considerations and I can't remember exactly what they were, but I remember the analysis we did. So Sarah, I'll dust it off and try to send it to you, but it was something about co-locating our adult sentence population with the
that
juvenile
too.
detention population.
Good point.
I want to say there were some issues with like PREA and sight and sound because of the way the different sentences worked. And I know enough to remember this came up, but not about the specific details.
Yeah, I think you're right.
That was overlaid.
If I was gonna add it to Judge Thomas, Chief Judge, Family and Juvenile Court, Thurston County, can't answer for Pierce County, but that the law, as it is currently written, does not allow us to co-locate 13 to 17-year-olds with 18 and above, and the primary overcrowding issue that as I understand it at JR is the 18 to 25. So that partnership is difficult because and the programming is really difficult when you're talking in terms of days and weeks as opposed to months and years.
Right.
Remove the survey.
Review the question before, just like more of a preview.
Corey's got another question. Corey, just set up a private meeting with me. I'm just kidding. Do you want to read it, Jenny?
Yes, I can. While capacity planning is inevitable right now for the foreseeable future, are there considerations for opportunities for JR youth to have early release for completion of relevant treatment programs, reduction in risk classification, and or other behavioral improvement tracking that is reinforced with less time served in an incarcerated setting or moved to community supervision?
Yeah, so I can't remember if I mentioned this earlier, if this was in the earlier presentation that I did. So as far as early release, we're already releasing a majority of our population on their minimum. And so I think if I'm following your question, Corey, if you're assuming any earlier than the minimum that's provided, I think that would take legislative action. I mean, the courts give young people a sentence with an expectation that they're serving at least the minimum term of that sentence. And I'm gonna look at the judge in the room and feel free to chime in.
I'm hoping there's still some judges online. We do sentence in a range, right?
Yeah.
So 15 to 36 weeks. When you're talking about 13 to 17-year-olds, the 18 to 25 is a whole different sentencing guideline and range.
Yeah, and so I would say, our current process, I mean, young people are getting their minimum release date because they're presenting as ready and low risk to go to the community. And there are those extenuating circumstances where we might have to extend a little bit, for maybe some treatment needs or some particularly egregious behavior. But even with that, it's, short extensions and it's limited. I mean, a majority of our population is getting out on their minimum, and we have not adjusted that because of our population issues. And so I don't know if that's a good practice or not, but that's our current practice. So anything kind of before that is not an option. And I would presume, those young people that are getting out on their minimum are so that they can go out and engage in community programs in a way that matches to what their needs assessment is saying.
Thanks for answering all my questions, Jennifer.
Okay.
Not yet, but so what we can do now is we have a preview of 4 of the questions that are included in the survey. At the conclusion of the 4 questions, you'll see a QR code where we do have, I believe it's up to 10 questions. So we have even more questions on the survey. We can run through these 4, and then if it sparks another comment or question, we can certainly talk through those as well while we leave the QR code up, if that works. So the first question we posed was, what is your understanding of the issues facing DCYF's juvenile rehabilitation system? Just thought it would be interesting to know what the understanding was prior to the session versus afterwards. The second question, what needs do you believe DCYF JR facility design should address? And what things does a new facility need for young people in JR? I think here we're starting to drive, even in the existing facilities that we have, what's missing that is needed. And as we're looking to bring a new facility online, whether it's renovation or a potential new facility, whether it be on the eastern side, what are those needs? So we're not it's not strictly geared toward new facilities, but we also have questions for the existing campus. And then the other question, describe priorities for any existing or proposed DCYF JR facilities. One of the more challenging aspects of a capital project master plan is you do have to prioritize and figure out what priorities need to occur when, and as we look to the range of 6 to 10 years, what are priorities that need to be addressed ahead of the 6 years versus what can be, 6 to 10. So that's what that question's trying to address. So this is the QR code. I believe it's also going to be distributed for those who couldn't attend today, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
It might be-
we'll have a section on our outward facing website with all of this information as well.
And on the follow-up slide is future contact. So that would be if you wanted to get in touch with DCYF or to have the survey after the fact. So yeah, this one is just for the survey.
There's no bad ideas. I mean, told the Spokane folks, East of the Mountains folks, like, where is there a place that we're missing, and that maybe it's not available now, but we can at least start engaging in a
Or where should we be
conversation.
looking? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then perhaps if you want to go to the next, so this slide just talks through our next steps. As we've discussed today, we're here to listen, incorporate that feedback. We'll provide a summary to DCYF. And then this is the contact to stay engaged with DCYF, find out more information. As information becomes available based on these sessions, using this QR code will get you in touch with that. And our goal is to have the master plan by the fall of this year. So maybe with this, you can go back to the other survey question just in case, or we'll leave that in the screen. I don't know if any of those questions that we read through prompted any other additional comments or feedback, thoughts.
Do you see anything in the chat, Jenny?
Yeah, all right. Well, with that, thank you everyone again for your time. For those online, thank you for showing up and engaging, asking the questions, using the chat. It was great to hear from everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.